6 months after the battle near Titan, the galaxy looked very different from humanity's perspective. The story of what happened had spread far beyond the Zalthrak collective. Dozens of alien civilizations had heard about how humans defeated a much larger fleet through intelligence and strategic planning rather than superior weapons. The reputation of humanity had changed dramatically. Kyle now spent most of his time at Earth Defense Command headquarters rather than on a ship. His role had evolved from fleet commander to strategic advisor. Military leaders from across human space wanted to understand the lessons from the Titan engagement. They wanted to apply those principles to other defensive scenarios and potential threats. Lisa had been promoted to Director of Strategic Intelligence. Her new position gave her oversight of all human intelligence operations throughout known space. The success of the operation against the Zalthrak had proven the value of comprehensive intelligence gathering, combined with strategic deception. Earth's leadership wanted to expand these capabilities even further. Jake continued to serve aboard the Horizon's Edge, now as the ship's executive officer under a new captain. His tactical innovations during the battle had earned him recognition throughout the fleet. Young officers studied his approach to weapons coordination and target prioritization. His methods became part of standard fleet doctrine. Nicole had been given command of an entire reconnaissance squadron. Shadowrunner remained her flagship, but now she coordinated the operations of 12 specialized intelligence-gathering vessels. These ships operated throughout the frontier regions, monitoring potential threats and collecting information that fed into Earth's strategic planning systems. The diplomatic relationship with the Zalthrak collective had developed in unexpected ways. After the initial peace treaty, both species discovered they had much to learn from each other. Trade between human and Zalthrak territories grew steadily. Cultural exchange programs introduced each species to the other's art, music, and philosophy. Former enemies were becoming cautious friends. Velmakar visited Earth several times during these months. Each visit strengthened the growing bonds between the two civilizations. During one conversation with Kyle, the Zalthrak diplomat admitted something surprising. The defeat near Titan, while painful, had probably saved the Zalthrak from making even worse mistakes in the future. They had learned important lessons about underestimating other species. Other alien species began approaching humanity with new attitudes. Some wanted to establish diplomatic relations, hoping to avoid any conflict with such a strategically sophisticated civilization. Others wanted to form military alliances, believing that having humans as friends would deter their own enemies. A few civilizations requested permission to send observers to study human military training and doctrine. Kyle and Lisa worked together to develop a framework for these new relationships. Earth's leadership wanted to be open to cooperation while maintaining necessary secrecy about critical capabilities. They shared some information freely while keeping other secrets closely guarded. The balance between transparency and security required constant attention and careful judgment. One particularly interesting development involved the Korvathi Federation, a civilization that had been watching the Zalthrak situation closely. The Korvathi had their own disputes with aggressive neighbors. They reached out to humanity requesting consultation on intelligence gathering and defensive planning. Kyle met with their military leader several times, sharing general principles while being careful not to reveal specific methods. Lisa established formal intelligence sharing agreements with 3 different alien civilizations. These partnerships allowed humans to expand their understanding of the galaxy while providing useful information to their new partners. The relationships were carefully structured to protect sensitive sources and methods, while still providing genuine value to all participants. Jake participated in several joint military exercises with allied alien forces. These exercises helped humans understand how different species approached warfare and tactics. They also demonstrated human capabilities to potential allies, building confidence in Earth's ability to contribute to mutual defense arrangements. The exercises were valuable learning experiences for everyone involved. Nicole's reconnaissance squadron discovered something concerning during a routine patrol mission. A previously unknown species was building military installations near a major trade route. The construction patterns suggested preparation for piracy or territorial expansion. Nicole's team gathered detailed intelligence over several weeks, documenting ship movements and communication patterns. Lisa analyzed the intelligence Nicole provided. The situation required careful handling. Starting a conflict was not desirable, but allowing piracy to threaten trade routes was also unacceptable. After consulting with Kyle and other advisors, Lisa developed a plan that used the lessons from the Zalthrak engagement. Human forces quietly positioned ships near the suspicious installations. At the same time, diplomatic channels opened communication with the new species, the Dralnix Consortium. The message was clear but polite. Humans knew what the Dralnix were planning. Humans had forces in position to respond if necessary. But humans preferred to negotiate rather than fight. The Dralnix could choose peace or conflict. The Dralnix leadership had heard stories about the battle near Titan. They understood the implications. Humans had demonstrated the ability to gather intelligence effectively and plan operations carefully. Fighting humans would be dangerous and expensive. The Dralnix chose negotiation. Within weeks, they agreed to abandon their aggressive plans in exchange for trade agreements and security guarantees. This peaceful resolution demonstrated another important aspect of human strategy. The reputation earned through the Zalthrak engagement provided diplomatic leverage. Other species now took human warnings seriously. They understood that humans meant what they said and had the capabilities to back up their words. This credibility made diplomacy more effective and reduced the need for actual combat. Kyle reflected on these developments during a quiet moment in his office. The battle near Titan had been a turning point for humanity's position in the galaxy. Before that engagement, humans were seen as newcomers who might be weak or inexperienced. Now they were recognized as a sophisticated civilization with advanced strategic capabilities. This change in perception had opened new opportunities and partnerships. Lisa understood that maintaining this reputation required constant work. Human intelligence networks continued to expand and improve. New technologies enhanced surveillance capabilities. Training programs prepared officers to think strategically about information and deception. The success against the Zalthrak was not an endpoint, but rather the beginning of a new approach to security and defense. Jake knew that future conflicts would test humanity in different ways. Not every enemy would make the same mistakes the Zalthrak made. Some adversaries would be more careful, more sophisticated, more dangerous, but the fundamental principles would remain valuable. Good intelligence, careful planning, and strategic thinking would always provide advantages in conflict. Nicole continued to push the boundaries of reconnaissance technology and techniques. Her squadron experimented with new sensor systems, communication methods, and stealth technologies. Each improvement enhanced humanity's ability to watch potential threats and gather information before conflicts developed. The goal was to maintain the advantage that intelligence provided. The Zalthrak defeat had taught the galaxy an important lesson about humanity. Humans were not just another species with ships and weapons. They were strategic thinkers who understood that wars could be won or prevented through intelligence and planning. They were patient enough to execute complex long-term operations. They were sophisticated enough to use deception as effectively as firepower. And they were willing to show mercy when possible, while remaining dangerous when necessary. As humanity continued to expand its presence among the stars, these qualities shaped how other species interacted with Earth and its colonies. Some civilizations sought friendship and alliance. Others maintained respectful distance. A few still harbored hostile intentions, but approached humanity with much greater caution than the Zalthrak had shown. The perfect trap that failed near Titan had become a legend throughout the galaxy. The story was told and retold, sometimes accurately and sometimes with dramatic embellishments. But the core message remained consistent. Humanity had been watching from the start. They would continue watching, and underestimating human strategic capabilities was a mistake that could prove fatal. 3 weeks after the battle, Kyle found himself in a completely different environment. He was no longer on the bridge of the horizon's edge. Instead, he stood in a diplomatic conference facility that orbited in neutral space between human and Zalthrak territories. This meeting represented a major shift in the relationship between the two species. Lisa accompanied Kyle to these diplomatic discussions. Her role had changed from tactical operations officer to diplomatic liaison. Her understanding of the intelligence operation made her very valuable during negotiations. The Zalthrak representatives needed to understand not just what happened, but why humans chose to handle the situation the way they did. The Zalthrak sent a delegation led by Strategic Director Vel Makar. This civilian official had replaced much of the military leadership after their terrible defeat. Velmacar approached the negotiations with great caution. The Zalthrak now understood that their previous understanding of humanity had been completely wrong. During the initial meetings, Kyle explained human strategic philosophy in simple terms. Earth's forces did not want to conquer or control other species. However, they would defend themselves using whatever methods were necessary. Humans believed that sometimes the most effective defense involved controlling what potential enemies thought about human capabilities. The intelligence operation that led to the Zalthrak defeat was not created in response to their military buildup. Kyle explained that humanity maintained comprehensive intelligence networks throughout known space as a standard defensive measure. The Zalthrak preparations for war simply activated plans and systems that were already in place and waiting. Jake had written a detailed report analyzing the battle. His document became required reading at Earth's military training schools. The report emphasized an important point. The battle was won during the planning phase, not during the actual fighting. The physical combat simply confirmed what strategic intelligence had already determined would happen. Nicole and her crew received awards for their work during the operation. However, much of what Shadowrunner accomplished remained classified information. Her ship was just one piece of a much larger intelligence system. Most people, both human and alien, knew nothing about the full extent of human surveillance capabilities. Intelligence operations worked best when adversaries did not understand their full scope. Lisa worked with Velmacar and the Zalthrak diplomatic team to create new communication systems. These would help prevent future misunderstandings between the two species. The Zalthrak were learning an important lesson. Humans valued clear communication and mutual understanding when possible, but humans were also willing to use elaborate deception when they believed it was necessary for survival. The diplomatic discussions took several weeks. Eventually, they produced a comprehensive agreement between humanity and the Zalthrak collective. The treaty included many provisions. Both species agreed not to attack each other. They would share intelligence about mutual threats. They would establish trade relationships. They would create cultural exchange programs. Both civilizations recognized that their conflict had resulted from misunderstandings rather than fundamental incompatibility. During a private conversation, Velmacar told Kyle something significant. The battle near Titan had fundamentally changed how the Zalthrak viewed humanity. The aliens had assumed humans were a young species that could be intimidated or defeated through conventional military pressure. Now they understood that humanity's youth as a space-traveling civilization did not reflect their actual strategic sophistication. Kyle acknowledged that humanity kept many military capabilities secret. Even most human civilians did not know everything about Earth's defenses. Human planning assumed that potential enemies would try to gather intelligence. Therefore, humans had developed detailed methods for controlling what information was available to discover. The Zalthrak had found exactly what humanity wanted them to find. Lisa reflected on what the entire operation demonstrated about human strategic thinking. Humans preferred to win conflicts before actual fighting became necessary. They invested heavily in intelligence gathering and analysis because information often proved more valuable than weapons. And humans were patient enough to execute plans that took months or years to develop properly. Jake noted in his analysis report that the battle near Titan would influence military thinking throughout the galaxy. Other species would study what happened and form conclusions about human capabilities. Some conclusions would be accurate. Many would not be, and humanity would certainly use that confusion to their advantage in future situations. As the diplomatic conference concluded, Kyle stood at the observation windows looking out at the stars. Humanity had proven several important things during this conflict. They had shown they could defend themselves effectively. They had demonstrated sophisticated understanding of strategic deception, and they had shown they preferred negotiation to unnecessary destruction when given the choice. The Zalthrak collective had come to destroy what they believed was humanity's most important military facility. Instead, they encountered a carefully prepared trap designed around detailed intelligence about alien tactics and thinking. The perfect trap they planned for humanity's fleet had failed because humans had been watching from the very beginning. Kyle knew this was just one chapter in humanity's journey through space. The galaxy was enormous. Many other species existed out there, Some would approach with peaceful intentions. Others would have hostile plans. But the Zalthrak would not be the last civilization to test humanity's resolve and capabilities. Word would spread about what happened near Titan. Other species would hear the story. They would learn that humans were not easy targets. They would understand that attacking Earth meant facing an enemy that might have been watching and planning for months or even years. This knowledge would make future conflicts less likely, which was exactly what Kyle wanted. Future adversaries would have to wonder about the intelligence they gathered. Was it accurate? Was it deception? Could they trust what they thought they knew about human defenses? And they would have to acknowledge that humanity brought thousands of years of strategic experience to every situation, experience earned through their own long history of warfare and survival on Earth. As the Horizon's Edge began its journey back to Earth, Kyle felt satisfied. Humanity had achieved its objectives. The Zalthrak would not threaten human interests again. Other species would think very carefully before testing Earth's defenses, and humanity would continue to watch, gather intelligence, and prepare for whatever challenges the galaxy might present. Lisa stood beside Kyle at the observation window. She understood as well as anyone that the battle near Titan was just one event in humanity's ongoing story among the stars. There would be other conflicts in the future. There would be other challenges. There would be other species that needed to learn about human strategic capabilities through direct experience. But the fundamental lesson would remain consistent. Humanity did not just react to threats. They anticipated them. They planned for them. When necessary, they created the conditions for victory long before actual combat began. This proactive approach to defense made humans far more dangerous than species who simply built bigger weapons and larger fleets. The perfect trap had belonged to humanity all along. Anyone who underestimated human strategic thinking would learn this lesson just as the Zalthrak Collective had learned it, and the galaxy would become a slightly safer place for humanity, with each species that learned to respect Earth's capabilities. Kyle turned away from the window and walked back to his command chair. There was still work to do. Reports to write, debriefings to conduct, plans to update based on lessons learned. The work of defending humanity never truly ended. But for now, this chapter was complete. The Zalthrak had come seeking to destroy humanity's fleet. They failed because they never understood who they were really fighting. They saw human ships and weapons. They counted human resources. But they never grasped human strategic thinking until it was too late, and that made all the difference. Jelkoth sat in the damaged control room of his flagship. The emergency lights created dark shadows everywhere. Most of his officers had left to go to safer parts of the ship after human weapons tore holes in the hull. The computer screens in front of him showed a complete disaster. His mind struggled to understand what had happened. 600 warships had come to attack the humans. Now less than 100 ships could still fight, and many of those were trying to escape. The Zalthrak Collective had never experienced such a terrible defeat. Jelkoth still did not understand how humans had destroyed his fleet so completely. A communication signal came through to his ship. It was from the human flagship. Kyle wanted to talk. Jelkoth accepted the communication. When the human admiral appeared on the screen, Jelkoth could see confidence in the human's face. The alien commander felt confusion and growing fear as he realized he was about to learn something important. Kyle spoke calmly and directly. He explained that humans had known about the Zalthrak military buildup from the very beginning. Human spies had watched every planning meeting. Human agents had intercepted every communication. Human analysts had studied every decision the Zalthrak military leaders made. The attack on Titan was never a surprise. Humans had been expecting it for months. More importantly, Kyle continued, the information the Zalthrak had collected about human defenses had been prepared by human intelligence services. The sensor readings that showed fleet positions were real data, but incomplete. The communications about supplies and logistics were genuine, but only part of the truth. The apparent weaknesses near Titan were designed deliberately to look believable. Everything the Zalthrak learned was information that humans wanted them to have. Lisa had supervised much of this intelligence operation. Her teams worked with computer specialists to make sure that every piece of information the Zalthrak found led them to the wrong conclusions. It was deception at a massive scale. Humans used truth as effectively as lies to shape what the enemy believed. The Zalthrak thought they understood human military power. They were completely wrong. Jake had been part of the team that designed the fake weaknesses in the Titan defenses. Every gap in the defensive formation was calculated carefully. Every timing flaw in the patrol patterns was created on purpose. The Zalthrak tactical analysts identified exactly what human planners wanted them to see. The aliens thought they had found real weaknesses to exploit. Those weaknesses were bait in a trap. Nicole and her crew on Shadowrunner represented just one small piece of humanity's intelligence gathering system. While the Zalthrak focused on finding obvious spy ships and sensor platforms, humans had deployed networks of tiny monitoring devices that were almost impossible to detect. The aliens had been completely blind while believing they could see everything. Kyle continued his explanation. He wanted Zhalkoth to understand completely what had happened. This was not about being cruel. The future relationship between humans and Zalthrak depended on the aliens understanding certain important truths about humanity. Humans, Kyle explained, had spent thousands of years fighting wars against each other before they ever met alien species. During all those centuries, humans developed sophisticated methods of deception, intelligence gathering, and strategic manipulation. When humanity finally reached the stars and encountered other civilizations, they brought all those skills with them. The Zalthrak had made a critical mistake. They assumed that because human technology was similar to their own technology, human strategic thinking would also be similar. This assumption was completely wrong. Technology was important, but human military effectiveness came from doctrine, training, and strategic thinking as much as from weapons. Humans approached warfare very differently than the Zalthrak did. Zhalkoth listened and slowly began to understand. His people had analyzed human military capabilities by comparing them to Zalthrak military capabilities. They had failed to understand that humans thought about war in fundamentally different ways. The Zalthrak valued direct strength and numerical superiority. Humans valued deception, intelligence, and strategic planning. Kyle offered terms for the surviving Zalthrak ships to leave the battle zone safely. Humanity had made its point. More destruction was not necessary. The Admiral wanted the Zalthrak leaders to understand that humans could have destroyed every alien ship completely, but chose not to. Sometimes showing mercy from a position of total strength carried more strategic value than complete annihilation. This was an important lesson. Kyle wanted other species in the galaxy to know that humans could be reasonable and merciful, but he also wanted them to know that humans were extremely dangerous when threatened. The combination of capability and restraint would make other civilizations think very carefully before attacking Earth. Zhalkoth accepted the terms. His fleet was broken. His mission had failed completely, but at least the surviving ships and crews would live. He asked Kyle one question. How long had humans been planning this trap? The answer shocked him. The trap had been ready for years. Humans maintained intelligence networks and defensive plans for dozens of potential scenarios. The Zalthrak attack was just one possibility that human planners had prepared for. Lisa watched the communication with satisfaction. The psychological impact of this revelation would spread throughout the Zalthrak collective and beyond. Other alien species would hear about what happened here. They would learn that humans were not easy targets. They would understand that attacking Earth meant facing an enemy that had probably been watching you for months or years already. Jake began coordinating the withdrawal of Zalthrak forces. Human ships created a safe corridor for the aliens to use. The humans did not pursue or attack the retreating vessels. This restraint was deliberate. Kyle wanted the Zalthrak survivors to return home and tell their leaders exactly what had happened. The story they told would be more valuable than any propaganda humans could create. Nicole brought Shadowrunner back to the main fleet. Her mission was complete. The intelligence her crew gathered had helped humans win the battle with minimal losses. But more importantly, they had demonstrated capabilities that would make other species reconsider any hostile plans they might have toward humanity. As the Zalthrak ships began their retreat, Kyle reflected on what this battle meant. It was not just a military victory. It was a statement to the galaxy about what humanity could do. Earth's forces had shown they could gather intelligence effectively, plan strategically, execute complex operations, and show mercy when appropriate. These were the qualities of a mature civilization, not a young species that could be easily intimidated. The communication with Zhalkoth ended. The Zalthrak commander understood now that his species had encountered something unexpected. Humans were not just technologically capable. They were strategically sophisticated in ways the Zalthrak had never considered. The perfect trap the aliens designed had been humanity's trap all along. Kyle turned to Lisa and Jake. Both officers had performed excellently during this operation. The planning had worked perfectly. The intelligence gathering had been flawless. The execution of the battle plan had been precise. This was what human military forces could accomplish when all elements worked together effectively. But Kyle also knew this was just one battle. The galaxy was large. There were many other species out there. Some would be friendly, some would be neutral, and some would be hostile. The Zalthrak would not be the last civilization to test humanity's strength. But word would spread about what happened here, and that would make future conflicts less likely. The lesson was clear. Humans had been watching from the start. They would continue watching. And any species that tried to attack Earth would discover, as the Zalthrak had discovered, that humans were far more dangerous than they appeared. Jalkoth felt confident for exactly 4 seconds after he gave the order to begin the final attack. Then every display screen in his control room exploded with warning signals. Dozens of human ships that had been completely invisible suddenly appeared on his sensors. They were everywhere, surrounding his fleet from all directions. Kyle's voice went out across the human fleet communication network. His order was simple and clear. Every human ship knew exactly what to do. They had practiced this exact scenario dozens of times in training simulations. Now it was real, and they executed their roles perfectly. The human ships that had been hiding throughout the battle zone activated their engines and weapons at the same moment. The stealth technology that kept them hidden was impressive. But the real genius was in how humans had used it. They did not just hide a few ships. They had hidden entire battle groups positioned at key locations all around the Zalthrak fleet. Lisa watched her tactical display as the Zalthrak formation began to fall apart. The aliens had designed their battle plan around attacking human ships in specific positions. Instead, they found themselves being attacked from multiple directions by forces they did not know existed. Their careful planning became useless in seconds. Jake coordinated the weapons release across the human fleet. Human missiles fired in carefully timed volleys. The timing was designed to confuse and overwhelm the Zalthrak defensive systems. Energy weapons from multiple ships focused on priority targets. The concentrated fire from unexpected angles overloaded the alien shields quickly. Nicole brought Shadowrunner out of stealth mode and into active combat. Her ship had special weapons designed for attacking command vessels. The intelligence her crew had gathered over the past 2 days gave human weapons officers detailed information about weak points in Zalthrak shield systems. This information would normally take weeks of combat experience to learn. Humans already had it before the battle started. The electronic warfare packages that Lisa's teams had prepared launched into action. False data began flooding into the Zalthrak communication networks. Alien tactical computers started receiving fake sensor readings. Position data became corrupted. The Zalthrak sub-commanders could not coordinate with their fleet leadership effectively. Everything became chaotic very quickly. Jalkoth tried desperately to understand what had happened. His intelligence reports had been so thorough. The human defensive positions near Titan were exactly where they were supposed to be. The humans had shown no signs of knowing about the approaching Zalthrak fleet until the last moment. How could this be happening? What Jalkoth did not realize was simple but devastating. Everything he thought he knew about human military capabilities had been fed to him deliberately. The sensor readings his spy ships collected were real data, but they only showed what humans wanted him to see. The intelligence his agents gathered was accurate information about things that did not matter. The Zalthrak had been fighting blind while believing they could see perfectly. Kyle watched the engagement with calm focus. This was exactly what the planning committee had predicted would happen. The Zalthrak were trying to reform their battle lines and organize a defense. But the combination of the surprise attack from multiple directions and the electronic warfare disruption made coordination almost impossible. Lisa noted with satisfaction that Zalthrak responses matched the predictions almost exactly. When you understood how an enemy thought, when you controlled what information they received, their actions became predictable. Even in the chaos of combat, the aliens were doing what human planners expected them to do. Jake tracked the damage reports coming from across the battle zone. Human forces were systematically targeting specific Zalthrak vessels. They focused on command ships and support craft that enabled fleet coordination. Destroying these key vessels would cripple the alien ability to fight as an organized military force. Each target was chosen carefully based on intelligence about Zalthrak fleet operations. Nicole's weapons officer found the perfect targeting solution to attack a Zalthrak carrier ship. The carrier was trying to launch additional fighter craft, but human intelligence had identified exactly how to penetrate the carrier's hangar shielding. The resulting explosions tore through the carrier's interior. Within seconds, the massive ship transformed from a military asset into floating debris. The Zalthrak fleet began showing signs of complete breakdown. Individual ship commanders could not receive clear orders from their leaders. They faced threats from directions they thought were safe. Their careful battle plan had collapsed. Now each captain had to make independent decisions about whether to fight or retreat. Military discipline began to crack under the pressure. Some Zalthrak captains chose to retreat. They turned their ships around and began accelerating away from the battle zone. Other captains tried to maintain their attack, but without coordination, their efforts were scattered and ineffective. The unified fleet that had arrived so confidently was now just individual ships trying to survive. Kyle had fought in many battles during his long career. He knew when an engagement was decided. The Zalthrak had lost. Their fleet was broken. Most of their ships were either destroyed, damaged, or fleeing. The aliens had come to destroy what they believed was humanity's critical military infrastructure. Instead, they had lost most of their own fleet. Lisa felt a sense of accomplishment. Years of work had led to this moment. The intelligence operation she had helped plan had worked perfectly. The false information fed to the Zalthrak had shaped their entire battle plan. The careful positioning of hidden human forces had turned the alien attack into a death trap. Everything had come together exactly as designed. Jake continued monitoring the tactical situation. Some Zalthrak ships were still fighting, but their resistance was weakening. Human forces maintained pressure on the alien fleet, not allowing them time to regroup or reorganize. The systematic destruction of Zalthrak command vessels had left the alien fleet leaderless and confused. Nicole guided Shadowrunner through the battlefield, her crew identifying targets and coordinating with other human ships. The intelligence they had gathered before the battle continued to provide advantages. They knew which Zalthrak ships were most dangerous. They knew which vessels carried important technology. They could prioritize targets based on knowledge the aliens did not know humans possessed. Zhalkoth sat alone in the damaged control room of his flagship. Emergency power provided minimal lighting. Most of his tactical staff had evacuated to safer parts of the ship after human weapons breached multiple sections of the hull. The displays in front of him showed a disaster he could barely comprehend. 600 warships had come to attack Titan. Now fewer than 100 remained combat-capable, and many of those were trying to escape. The Zalthrak Collective had suffered a defeat more complete than anything in their military history, and Zhalkoth still did not fully understand how it had happened. Kyle decided it was time to open communication with the Zalthrak commander. The battle was effectively over. Continuing to destroy fleeing ships would serve no strategic purpose. More importantly, Kyle wanted Zhalkoth to understand what had happened. Sometimes the best weapon was not a missile or laser, but information delivered at exactly the right moment. The Admiral authorized a direct communication link to the Zalthrak flagship. It was time for a conversation that would change how the Zalthrak Collective understood humanity. The physical battle was over, but the psychological impact was just beginning. What Kyle was about to tell Zhalkoth would be more devastating than any weapon humans had used during the engagement. The perfect trap the Zalthrak thought they had designed for humanity had failed completely. The aliens had walked into humanity's trap instead, and they had been inside that trap from the very beginning. From the first moment they started planning their attack. Humans had been watching from the start, guiding them, shaping their decisions, leading them exactly where humans wanted them to go. The Zalthrak warfleet appeared from quantum space right where they had planned. Their ships spread out across a huge area of space. Supreme Commander Zhalkoth stood in the control room of his flagship. He looked at the tactical displays with satisfaction. Everything was going perfectly according to plan. 600 warships made up the Zalthrak attack force. This was the biggest military operation the Zalthrak had launched in 3 generations. Their intelligence reports said that human defenses were concentrated around the Titan space station. Jalkoth believed that destroying that station would break human military power. The war would be over quickly. Far away from the main human fleet, Captain Nicole Carter watched the alien ships arrive. She commanded a small spy ship called Shadow Runner. Her ship had been floating in space for 2 days, completely silent. Special stealth technology made Shadow Runner invisible to Zalthrak sensors. The aliens had no idea she was there, watching everything they did. The Zalthrak fleet moved into an attack formation. Jalkoth split his forces into several groups. His plan was to attack from many different directions at once. This would force the human defenders to split up their ships too. Then the Zalthrak could use their superior numbers to overwhelm the humans. It was a standard Zalthrak battle tactic, and it usually worked very well. Back on the horizon's edge, Lisa sent a message to Kyle. The Zalthrak had arrived exactly when human intelligence predicted they would. The timing was perfect. Every detail matched what the Human Planning Committee had expected. The aliens were following their own battle plan precisely, not knowing that humans had read that plan months ago. Jake updated his tactical display to show where all the Zalthrak ships were. But his screen showed more than just the alien positions. It also showed the locations of more than 60 human ships that the Zalthrak could not see. These ships were hiding throughout the area, completely silent and dark. Special technology masked their engines and power systems. The aliens had no idea these ships existed. Jalkoth observed the human fleet near Titan with growing confidence. The human ships seemed to be moving into defensive positions in a hurry. They looked disorganized, like they had been caught by surprise. His tactical officers had already identified several weaknesses in the human formation. Everything was proceeding exactly as the Zalthrak battle plan said it would. What Jalkoth did not know was that humans were tracking every single move his fleet made. Tiny sensor devices floated throughout the area. These devices were very small, about the size of a human hand. They collected information without sending out any signals that could be detected. They sent their data through a special quantum communication system that the Zalthrak did not have the technology to detect or intercept. Nicole watched as the alien fleet committed to their approach path. The Zalthrak ships accelerated toward what looked like a gap in the human defenses. To them, this gap appeared to offer a direct route to attack the Titan station. Jalkoth had taken the bait exactly as human planners had predicted he would. The trap was working perfectly. Kyle reviewed the real-time updates on his command screens. He had been a military officer for many decades. He had learned the importance of patience during battles like this. The Zalthrak needed to fully commit to their attack before humans revealed their hidden forces. If humans showed their hand too early, the aliens might escape and regroup. Then they would learn from their mistakes and try again with a better plan. Lisa coordinated with the electronic warfare teams. Human cyber warfare specialists had been studying Zalthrak computer systems and communication networks for months. They knew how the alien systems worked. When the right moment came, they would inject false data into the Zalthrak tactical computers. This would add confusion to the physical attack that was coming. Jake monitored the weapon status of every human ship. All ships reported they were ready to fight. Crews were at battle stations. Weapons were charged and ready to fire. But the human ships maintained their defensive positions. To the Zalthrak, it still looked like a fleet that was trying to organize a hasty defense. The aliens had no idea that every human ship was positioned exactly where it needed to be. The Zalthrak fleet crossed an invisible line in space. Human planners had marked this as the point of no return. Once the aliens crossed this line, they would be too deep into the battle zone to escape easily. Their ships would be surrounded, though they did not know it yet. The trap was almost ready to spring shut. The alien formation looked very disciplined and organized. The Zalthrak were not amateurs. They were skilled warriors with good training and good coordination. Their fleet moved together smoothly, showing the kind of discipline that made them dangerous enemies. Jalkoth prepared to give the order for the final attack run. Victory seemed certain to him. Nicole sent the final confirmation signal to Kyle. The enemy had fully committed to their attack. Every major Zalthrak warship was now inside the kill zone. The hidden human ships surrounded them on all sides. The aliens remained completely unaware that they had sailed into a carefully prepared trap, a trap that had been designed specifically for them, based on months of intelligence gathering about their tactics and technology. Kyle took a slow, deep breath. This was the moment everything had been building toward. Months of planning. Months of intelligence gathering. Months of careful deception. All of it came down to the next few minutes. He prepared to give the order that would activate the counterattack. The Zalthrak believed they were attacking an unprepared enemy. They thought they had superior intelligence. They thought they understood human weaknesses. They thought victory was assured. In reality, they understood nothing. Humans had been controlling the information the Zalthrak received from the very beginning. Every fact the aliens knew was either true but incomplete or false but believable. The Zalthrak had built their entire battle plan on a foundation of lies and misdirection. Lisa watched her tactical display with focused intensity. Years of military training had prepared her for this moment. She had helped plan this operation from the start. She had worked with intelligence teams to craft the false information that the Zalthrak received. She had helped identify the psychological weaknesses in Zalthrak military thinking. Now she would see if all that work would pay off. Jake's fingers moved across his control panel, making final adjustments to targeting systems. He had studied Zalthrak ship designs for months. He knew where their shields were weakest. He knew which systems were most critical. He knew how to hurt them most effectively. That knowledge would make the coming attack much more devastating than the aliens expected. Jalkoth looked at his tactical display one last time before giving the final attack order. Everything appeared perfect. The human ships were right where intelligence said they would be. The defensive gaps were exactly where they were supposed to be. The path to the Titan station was clear. He felt the satisfaction of a plan coming together flawlessly. In 4 seconds, that satisfaction would turn to horror. In 4 seconds, Jalkoth would discover that everything he believed was wrong. In 4 seconds, the Zalthrak Collective would learn what happened when you underestimated human strategic thinking. Kyle's hand hovered over the communication panel. The order he was about to give would change everything. The Zalthrak had come hunting for easy prey. They were about to discover that humans were never easy prey. They were about to learn that humans were predators too, and very good ones. The moment had arrived. The trap was ready. The Zalthrak were in position. Every human ship knew its role. Every human weapon was aimed and ready. All the planning, all the deception, all the preparation came down to this single moment in time. Kyle pressed the button. The order went out to every human ship simultaneously. The time for hiding was over. The time for patience had ended. Now was the time for action. The perfect trap that the Zalthrak thought they had set was about to snap shut, but they were on the wrong side of it. Admiral Kyle Bennett stood in the control room of his ship, the horizon's edge. He looked at the big screen in front of him. The screen showed all the human ships floating in space near Saturn's moon, Titan. There were 247 ships total. They all looked like they were getting ready to defend the space station near Titan. Next to Kyle stood Commander Lisa Morgan. She was reading reports on her computer tablet. Her eyes moved quickly as she read all the secret information that human spies had sent from far away in space. The reports told them everything about what the aliens were doing. The aliens called themselves the Zalthrak Collective. For many months now, they had been building a huge war fleet. They wanted to attack Earth and destroy humanity. The Zalthrak leaders told their people that their fleet was so strong that nothing could stop them. They believed they would win easily. What the Zalthrak did not know was simple. Humans had been watching them the whole time. Human spies were hiding near the Zalthrak home planet. Human spy satellites floated in space, recording everything the aliens did. Every ship the Zalthrak built, every plan they made, every word their leaders spoke. Humans knew about it all. Lisa turned to Kyle and showed him the newest report. The Zalthrak had finally made their battle plan. They had studied human ships for a long time. They had watched where human ships went. They had counted how many supplies humans needed. They thought they understood everything about human military power. The Zalthrak leaders believed they had found humanity's biggest weakness. They looked at all their spy information and decided something important. The space station near Titan was the key to everything. That station built new ships for Earth. That station fixed broken ships. That station stored fuel and weapons. If the Zalthrak could destroy that station, they thought, then humanity would lose the war quickly. Kyle smiled a little when he read this. The Zalthrak were so sure they were right. They had no idea that everything they learned was exactly what humans wanted them to learn. Every piece of information the aliens found. Every spy report they collected, every secret they discovered was all part of a plan. A human plan. The truth was different from what the Zalthrak believed. Yes, there was a space station near Titan. Yes, it did build ships and store supplies. But it was not as important as the aliens thought. Humans had many other stations hidden throughout the solar system. These secret stations did most of the real work. The Titan station was just for show. It was bait in a trap. Lieutenant Jake Patterson worked at another computer station nearby. He was in charge of weapons and battle planning. Jake highlighted several areas on the big screen. His computer showed exactly which path the Zalthrak ships would take when they attacked. The predictions were very accurate because humans knew how the aliens thought and how they fought. Kyle had learned many lessons during his long military career. One important lesson was this: the best way to win a war is not always to have bigger guns or more ships. Sometimes the best weapon is knowledge. If you know what your enemy is thinking, if you know what information they have, if you know what they will do next, then you can beat them before the fighting even starts. The space station near Titan was real enough. Workers lived there. Ships docked there. But the Zalthrak would be very surprised when they attacked. The station was not the heart of human military power. Far from it. The real shipyards were hidden on moons and asteroids all over the solar system. Even most human soldiers did not know where these secret bases were located. Lisa pulled up a timeline on her screen. According to human intelligence, the Zalthrak fleet would begin their attack in 72 hours. 3 days. The alien ships would travel through an area of space that looked like it had few human defenses. The Zalthrak commanders thought human sensors would see them too late. They thought human ships would not have time to prepare properly. Jake sent messages to all the ship captains in the human fleet. Every captain needed to know their job. Every crew needed to understand the plan. The human ships near Titan would stay where they were. They would look surprised when the Zalthrak appeared. They would look like they were scrambling to get ready. But it would all be an act. Every ship knew exactly what to do. Kyle walked over to the big windows on the side of the control room. He looked out at space and at all the human ships floating there. Each ship represented years of work. Engineers had designed them carefully. Workers had built them with skill. Crews had trained for months to operate them. Every person on every ship was ready for what would happen next. The Zalthrak Collective was about to learn something important about humans. Humans could be very patient when they needed to be. Humans were willing to look weak if it would trick an enemy. Humans were very good at lying and deception. They had been practicing these skills for thousands of years through countless wars on Earth. Now they used these same skills in space. Against aliens, Kyle returned to his command chair in the middle of the control room. He sat down and looked at all the displays around him. Everything was ready. All the pieces were in place. The Zalthrak thought they were about to spring a perfect trap on the human fleet. They had planned everything so carefully. They had studied human defenses for so long. They were confident they would win, but the Zalthrak were wrong. They had been wrong from the very beginning. Every step of their plan had been guided by false information. Every decision they made was based on lies that humans had fed to them. The aliens thought they were hunting humans. The truth was the opposite. Humans were hunting them. Lisa stood next to Kyle's chair. She understood the plan as well as anyone. She had helped create parts of it. She had worked with the spy teams who provided false information to the Zalthrak. She had helped design the fake weaknesses in the Titan defenses. Everything had been planned with great care and attention to detail. Jake continued to monitor his weapon systems. Every human ship reported that they were ready to fight. All guns were charged and ready to fire. All missiles were loaded. All shields were at full power. But the ships kept their energy signatures low. They wanted to look like they were just doing normal patrol duties. They did not want to alert the Zalthrak that something was different. Kyle thought about what would happen in 3 days. The Zalthrak fleet would arrive. They would see the human ships near Titan arranged just as their intelligence predicted. They would attack, confident in their superior numbers and careful planning, and then they would discover the truth. The truth about human capabilities. The truth about human intelligence gathering. The truth about who had really been watching whom. The Admiral took a deep breath. War was never easy, even when you had the advantage. People would die in the coming battle. Ships would be destroyed. But Kyle believed this confrontation was necessary. The Zalthrak needed to understand that humans would defend themselves. They needed to learn that attacking Earth was a terrible mistake. More importantly, other alien species would hear about what happened here. The galaxy was full of different civilizations. Some were friendly to humans, some were not. Some were still deciding what they thought about humanity. The coming battle would send a message to all of them. The message was clear. Humans might be young compared to other space-traveling species, but they were not weak. They were not easy targets. They were dangerous when threatened. Kyle looked at Lisa and Jake. Both of them were excellent officers. Both of them had worked hard to prepare for this moment. Soon, very soon, all their preparation would be tested. The Zalthrak were coming. The trap was set. And humanity was ready.